Welcome to 14 Days of Prayer and to my garage. We're coming to the end of this series, but I want to let you know on what's ahead. First, we'll have a bonus 15th day devotional on this Friday by Pastor Chris. Secondly, on Monday, we will begin a new series of devotionals called 15 Days of Hope. We are praying that God would use these devotionals to ground you in His Word and grow you in worship of Him. My name is Tim. And today we are going to look at Matthew chapter 27, verses 38 to 42. This is what it says. Two rebels were crucified with him being Jesus, one on his right and one on his left. Those who passed by hurled insults at him, shaking their heads and saying, "You're going to destroy the temple and build it in 3 days? Save yourself. Come down from the cross if you are the Son of God." In the same way, the chief priests, the teachers of the law, and the elders mocked him. "He saved others," they said, "but he can't save himself. He's the King of Israel. Let him come down now from the cross, and we will believe in him." If you've been a Christian for any length of time, you've probably heard the story of Jesus' death on the cross and quickly passed over it because you felt you knew what was going to happen. In light of where you are today, I invite you to consider the cross again. I love the irony of this passage that we just read. People are claiming Jesus isn't the Son of God because he's not saving himself, when the reality is that he isn't saving himself so that he can save everyone else. It is his intentional choice not to be saved. These bystanders missed the whole point of what Jesus was doing. They were seeing the death as having the upper hand. They saw Jesus' circumstance as his authority. But on the contrary, Jesus' circumstances were serving his purposes. Jesus was not being thrown about by the whim of earthly realities. Jesus was orchestrating the greatest comeback victory, at least from the perspective of humans, that will ever be recorded in history. The bystanders in this scene claimed that if Jesus were to save himself from this, then they would see him as the Son of God. But the odd thing is that if Jesus saved himself at that moment, they may have said he had power and strength, but they likely wouldn't have said that he has power over death, because they would not have witnessed it through his resurrection. His power would be mighty, but not limitless. Yet this is the God we serve, that his power is limitless. His saving power was proven through his resurrection. God didn't bring Jesus down from the cross because it would have foiled his plan all along. It wasn't the comeback victory, it was the pathway to victory. Jesus could do what no other human could do, and that was to provide salvation for every person through his death and resurrection. Like a 4-0 series win, his victory was decisive. Death was no match. Jesus is victorious. It's what led Paul to write in 1 Corinthians 15, "Where, O death, is your victory? Where, O death, is your sting? The sting of death is sin, and the power of sin is the law. But thanks be to God who gives us victory through" who? Our Lord Jesus Christ. The rebels who hung beside Jesus, the passers-by, the chief priests, the elders, and the teachers of the law all missed the weight of what Jesus was actually doing for them in that moment. I don't know about you, but I often find that I too glance past the cross and miss the weight of what Jesus was doing for me and for you. It's easy to get fixated on the earthly realities and forget about the power God has over these realities. What would it look like for you to trust in God's power during this season of life? For me, I picture it a lot like plugging into an unlimited power supply. Now, I live in an old house with a very limited power supply, and I like to do some woodworking in my garage, hence why we are here. The problem with doing woodworking in a house with limited power supply is that it's often I trip a breaker, and my tools turn off mid-cut, and they become useless. There may have been times when I've tripped a breaker 3 or 4 times with one tool use. In these times I find myself holding back bad words and wishing I had an unlimited power supply. This provides a picture for our relationship with Jesus. Jesus' death and resurrection provided an unlimited power supply to the believer. As humans, we are limited and only have so much power to work with, but with God, He provides everything we need. Today, I invite you to take some time to consider again what the cross means for your life. I invite you to consider the impact of Jesus' power over death and how that changes who you are today. Take some time to pray through these prayer prompts. You can find them written out in the post if you are watching on Facebook or on the website above the video. In what ways has Jesus already, here's the first prayer prompt, in what ways has Jesus already shown His power in your life? Write out a list and thank God for each one. Secondly, what is holding you back from trusting in God's goodness and power in your present circumstance? Confess this to God. Thirdly, write out a list of prayer requests you have. I encourage you to write out prayer requests for yourself, family, and others. Ask God to move in these circumstances for the glory of His name. Blessings on you.